On today's episode, could Zeev Buium be on the Blackhawks' radar with the second overall pick? I'll answer that, and we'll get into Taylor Raddysh's report card.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm Jack Bushman. Just a quick reminder to everyone watching this on YouTube right now, hit that like button. Go and comment as well as to your thoughts on defenseman Zeev Buium, whether the Blackhawks should be interested in him with the second overall pick, and also the grade that you would give forward Taylor Raddysh for his performance this season. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube as well. I still have a handful of draft profiles to get into, as well as 2023-2024 report cards. I got my Blackhawks top 10 prospects list coming up here soon. Lots of good stuff that you're not going to want to miss out on here in the offseason. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. And last but certainly not least, got to let you all know, today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Go and sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get $150 worth of bonus bets guaranteed. All right, good morning, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. And so far on the show this offseason, I've covered notable defenseman prospects such as Artem Levshinov, Zayne Parekh, and Anton Salayev, along with forwards such as Ivan Demidov, Caden Lindstrom, and most recently Cole Yzerman. Make sure to go and check out all of those episodes if you haven't done so already. You can easily find them under the 2024 NHL Draft Profile playlist. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. But today, I'm going to be getting into, for me personally, one of the most intriguing defenseman prospects in this year's draft class, and that's Zeev Buium from the University of Denver. He also played for the United States Development Program for a couple of years after coming out of California. He had a decent U18 year with the USNTDP, tallying 40 points, 5 goals, and 35 assists in 63 games worth of action. But boy, did he really burst onto the scene with a big-time freshman campaign for the Pioneers this year, helping them win their second national championship in 3 seasons. And he's caught the attention of a lot of folks. Some even think he could possibly be the first defenseman off of the board in this year's draft class. But getting into Zeev's profile a little bit, 6'1", 190-pound left-handed defenseman that turned 18 back in December. So kind of in the middle of this year's class in terms of age, not super young, probably a little bit closer to the older side than younger, but nothing to be concerned about or anything as one of the older prospects and lack of development. We certainly saw that this year as he tallied 50 points in 42 games, over a point-per-game margin as a freshman for Denver, as I mentioned. A huge piece of that team to help lead them back to a national championship. 11 goals and 39 assists in 42 games for Zeev Buium this year. And that 1.26 point-per-game margin, listen to this, Blackhawks fans, is the most among NCAA defensemen in their draft-eligible season over the last 25 years. Yes, that's right, more than Owen Power, who went number 1 overall, more than Quinn Hughes, one of the best offensive defensemen in the game right now, Charlie McAvoy, Zach Werenski. Zeev Buium topped all of them in points per game margin. And he also just had some really solid performances anywhere he played in the past year, really. Was really, really sound for the United States to also help them win a gold medal at the U20 World Juniors this past winter, tallied 5 points in 7 games there, and was the youngest player on the Red, White, and Blues roster and ascended himself into a top pairing role during the most meaningful games of that tournament. It was really impressive to see what Zeev did. He also won a gold medal for the USA at the U18 World Juniors, tallying 6 points in 7 games there. The kid's just a winner, man. And one thing that really stands out to me is just he's got that it factor. I don't know what it is. He's just got something about him. But as far as the rankings go, like kind of all the defensemen in this year's class, it really just depends on who you ask. Kind of some spotty rankings here for Zeev Buium, ranked 10th by Elite Prospects, 13th by Bob McKenzie. That's an older ranking. The highest is Craig Button, who has him at 4th. Tony Ferrari has Zeev 5th. McKean's Hockey has him down at 15th. Chris Peters has him 11th. Daily Faceoff has him 10th. And Dauber Prospects has him 5th. Getting into Zeev's strengths and weaknesses, though, I mentioned that it factor that he possesses. And what really stands out to me whenever I watch this kid play is how cerebral and how aggressive he is as a defenseman. And I wouldn't go as far to say as he's like a strictly offensive minded defenseman. That's not strictly his game. And I don't even think he has like the offensive ceiling that Zayne Parekh does. But I think the way that he thinks the game, the way that he visualizes everything out there, he just thinks the game with a really good offensive mind. And I think that's really where he shines, is reading plays really well and inserting himself into those areas, seeing where the open ice is going to be and taking advantage of it. You could just tell he's got that confidence in himself. He really believes that he can pull off and score goals that we don't see many other defensemen score. He can, skate the puck out of harm's way in the D zone and take it coast to coast. He cycles the puck well in the offensive zone. And just when he gets that little blip, that little opening, it feels like every time he goes and takes it. And he's just such a cerebral and aggressive defenseman. I don't really know if I've ever seen a prospect like him. But yeah, he can score razzle-dazzle type of goals. I wouldn't say he's got like elite straight line speed, but he's got really good edge work, really good lateral movements, and he's very shifty. He's very quick, and he's got sound puck control in hands, man. Like I said, he kind of plays like a skilled forward at the defenseman position. It's really rare to see someone kind of play the style that Zeev Buium plays, but reads defenses and opposing checkers so well. He'll dance around them, uses his hands as well to kind of shed ongoing puck checkers. And yeah, he'll just score highlight reel goals. You could just tell he's fully confident in his abilities. He wants the puck on his stick in big moments. And if you give him open ice, he's going to take it 9 times out of 10. I just love what he brings to the table. He's an absolute gamer. Maybe, like I said, not that top end speed. And I don't know if he's going to be like the most high octane offensive defenseman. As I mentioned, I think Zayne Parekh has the bigger runway in terms of offensive upside. But Zeev just has all these abilities. Like, he's just really sound in all areas. And I think he shapes up to be a really safe pick in this year's draft. Like, there aren't just glaring weaknesses in his game. He's a really sound passer. He's got good edge work, sees and thinks the game really well. His vision is great. His puck handling's good. The way he bounces off checks for a player who's only 6'1", I think is really impressive. Can shield the puck away from defenders. Can score goals. I would say he's more of a accuracy shooter than a power shooter from the blue line, and honestly doesn't score very many goals from far out, just because how he inserts himself and sees open ice and gets really aggressive and pinches down low below the circles. But there are just so many tools in his arsenal and not many weaknesses. And I also like to see during his freshman year with Denver, he got more physical this year. That was one kind of concern about his game leaving the USNTDP was, is he going to be a physical enough defenseman for his size? How is he going to fare against grown men? He passed that test in his freshman season with flying colors this year, not just because he was a point per game guy offensively, but because he just looked so poised and so calm. And if you go and watch the highlight tapes too of his defensive stuff, I think the most notable part of his defensive game is how he doesn't panic. And he always seemingly makes the simple and correct plays, whether that's a nice exit pass or going and showing support to his D partner and allowing himself to be open to receive a pass to help his partner get out of harm's way, or even if it's just making someone miss en route to getting the puck out of the D zone. Like, there are just so many things to love about this kid's game. And if you watch him actually play a game, not just the highlights, I feel like you're bound to fall in love with him because he just does so many things right. As far as the weaknesses go, there's truthfully, in my opinion, not much to talk about here. Sometimes I do believe that he thinks offense too much and, can get caught up in the play or really tries to force something that he shouldn't. but they're kind of few and far between. I do think he also still needs to obviously continue to add in that physicality, get a little bit stronger. Would love to see him over that 200-pound threshold to be able to handle that next level of grown man at the NHL level. Yes, he did it well in college, but the NHL, the pro scene is a whole nother beast. So he's certainly going to have to continue to develop in those areas. And then I just think sometimes he tries to do too much, but that is typical of a 17, 18-year-old kid. I think as a defenseman, though, the way Zeev likes to play the game, like I said, he's very confident in himself. He sees the game well, and if he reads open ice or sees any weaknesses, he's going to attack it. But sometimes as a defenseman at the next level, you just got to be 100% sure when you make those moves, and sometimes that led to poor decision-making at the college level. As far as my projection for Zeev Buium, though, I don't know. I accidentally just closed out of this. As far as my projection goes, I feel like he's a very safe top 4 defenseman with lots of upside if all works out. Like there's a ton of ceiling there. And comparing him to kind of what's so unique about this year's class is I feel like all these defensemen are unique in their own ways. I would say Zeev isn't, as physical as Artem Levshinov, doesn't have as much runway as Zayne Parekh does. Like if Parekh's shot transitions to the NHL level, he's going to be a wicked defender or a wicked point per game type of defender. I also don't think Zeev has like the booming shot that Sam Dickinson has from the blue line, but I really do think, he has the capability of being the best defenseman out of this class. The way I would kind of rank them or sort them, at least for now, is I feel like Levshinov is the more reliable defender with the bigger body. Parekh has the higher ceiling, like I mentioned, if it all works out. But Zeev is just well-rounded and well-versed in all areas. And like I said, he's just different, cerebral, aggressive. He has that it factor, and he's won everywhere he's played at. And I don't think that's a coincidence because he's had a meaningful role on all of those teams. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him being a very Devon Taves-like defenseman at the NHL level. Maybe not a 1A, but a very sharp 1B or 2A. I see Zeev Buium being a very good, safe defenseman at the next level. I do think because of Levshinov's defensive ability, his size, being a right-hander, those are all more intriguing than Zeev's kind of makeup in terms of his size, being a lefty, plays offensive-minded. So I do think Levshinov winds up being the first defenseman off the board for those reasons. I also do think someone probably takes a gamble on Anton Salayev because he's 6'7" and skates like a deer. I just broke down his draft profile on Wednesday's episode. Make sure to go and check that out if you want to hear more about Anton Salayev. So I think Zeev more than likely winds up being the third defenseman off of the board, probably somewhere in between number 6 and number 10, if I had to guess. But like I said, there are some folks who believe he could be the best defenseman in this year's draft. Maybe he winds up going as high as number 3, number 4. It is in the cards, but I think the more likely scenario is Levshinov goes 1, Salayev goes 2, Buium goes 3 in terms of the defenseman. As a potential long-term fit here with the Blackhawks, well, it would absolutely give them wicked puck-moving defensemen on the left-hand side. I mean, we saw Vlasic take major strides in that area this year. Kevin Korchinski, obviously, that's kind of his bread and butter, and adding Zeev Buium along with that would give the Blackhawks the most promising left side of a defensive core of any pipeline in the NHL. The problem is, 2, I think, is just too early for Zeev Buium to go personally. Even though I do think there's lots to love about him, I just don't think you can take him if you're the Blackhawks over Ivan Demidov. And there's also just the left-handed issue that I talked about with Salayev. Feels like the Blackhawks, look, I don't think that's going to be the end-all, be-all. And if Salayev slides or Buium slides, eventually, there does reach a point where you take the best guy available. But at number 2, I think there's just a couple of things that go into the mix that lead the Blackhawks elsewhere. So I just think Zeev winding up with the Hawks is very, very unlikely, just like with Anton Salayev. And even if he does slide, I don't know if it's going to be far enough for the Blackhawks to go in and trade up and make a move. I see Zeev and Salayev both probably at the latest being drafted at number 11 or number 12. And I don't even know if that's far enough for the Blackhawks to make a move. So unlikely that Zeev Buium winds up in Chicago, but I'm very intrigued by his skill set and very curious to see, A, how high he winds up going, B, what order he winds up going in, and see kind of just how everything shakes out with all the defensemen slated to go in the top 12, top 15 of this year's draft. But there is Zeev Buium's 2024 NHL Draft Profile. Go and comment down below right now your thoughts on Zeev Buium, whether you think the Blackhawks should be considering him at number 2, what kind of defenseman you think he shapes out at the NHL level. Coming up in just a moment here, I'll be getting into Taylor Raddysh's 2023-2024 report card. But first, I got to talk to you all about the fine folks over at FanDuel. It's playoff time in both the NBA and the NHL. Baseball is also in full swing, and FanDuel is your perfect place to bet on every single game. And right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's right, $150 worth of bonus bets, win or lose. And you can use these bonuses to bet on everything from slap shots all the way throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs to home runs across all the great ballparks and even slam dunks en route to the NBA championship, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Make sure to go and visit fanduel.com/lockdown right now to make your first bet an automatic winner. Again, that's fanduel.com/lockdown. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Segment 2, I've only got a few report cards left to dish out here on the podcast this summer before I do get into my Chicago Blackhawks summer 2024 top 10 prospects list. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on that when it drops here in a couple of weeks. Also, if you've missed out on the notable Blackhawks report cards that I've already gone over, such as Connor Bedard, Philip Kurashev, Seth Jones, Kevin Korchinski, Alex Vlasic, you can easily find those on my YouTube channel. Check out the 2024 report cards playlist, and also everything is easily time coded in the description so you can jump around quickly to that certain point of every episode. Today, though, I'm going to be getting into 26-year-old forward Taylor Raddysh's report card and dishing out a grade for his performance this season, which sadly was very uninspiring for him, to say the least. Coming into his second full season as a member of the Chicago Blackhawks after being acquired from Tampa Bay as part of that Brandon Hagel trade. And what a big-time season Raddysh had last year. He potted 20 goals for the first time as an NHLer, added in 17 assists as well, tallying 37 points in 78 games worth of action. We also saw him have a nice first kind of debut, if you will, with the Hawks, scoring 6 goals in 21 games at the end of the 2021-2022 campaign after first being acquired. And after what we had seen in his short time as a member of the Blackhawks, I really had hopes that Raddysh could be a good middle six goal scoring type of winner for the Hawks here in this rebuild. But after what we saw out of him this year, yeah, the plan might have changed, considering his future here in the Blackhawks organization. And the front office has a rather somewhat difficult decision to make, because obviously it was a very down year for Raddysh, but we had seen the upside in the year and a half prior since he joined the team. He's going to be an RFA here this summer. I personally would be willing to give him another chance, but at the same point in time, if they decide not to, it's kind of hard to argue against it considering the type of year that Taylor Raddysh had. Getting into the numbers here this year for Raddysh, 73 games played this season for the Hawks. He played in 78 the year prior. He tallied only 5 goals in 73 games played. As I mentioned, scored a career best 20 the year prior, and even had more goals in 21 games with the Blackhawks after first being acquired from Tampa Bay at the end of the 2022 season, in which he had 6 in 21 games, only 5 in 73 this year for Taylor Raddysh. Good for 10th on the Blackhawks. Also only chipped in for 9 assists. Assist numbers were down as well. He had 17 in 78 games the year prior. I never really figured Raddysh to be much of a playmaker, but to see even the playmaking take a step back like this year is absolutely concerning. He had the same amount of assists as Jared Tenorti had this year. That's never good. And Andreas Athanasiou only had 2 fewer than Raddysh did in 28 games worth of action. In total, Raddysh tallied 14 points, down, what's that? 23 points from what he had the year before with 37. Those 14 points were good for 12th on the Blackhawks. Not the type of year we were hoping for. Me personally, especially out of Taylor Raddysh, I was really impressed with his game, and I wouldn't say super high on his future, but I firmly believe he could have been a piece of the puzzle based on what I had seen last year. Also had 22 penalty minutes, nothing really notable there. Like to see, though, that he did stay out of the box considering how he inserted himself defensively a little bit more. I'll talk about that here in just a moment. Minus 19 in terms of the plus minus. Another concerning stat for Raddysh, only one power play goal when he had 7 the year before. Maybe, I did anticipate that would be a little bit of an outlier, but in a net front presence type of role, I thought he'd at least be a guy who could chip in for 3 or 4 year to year, considering the talent that's around him. Maybe not solely to blame because the Blackhawks power play was terrible this year, but that's for another conversation. But only 3 even strength goals for Taylor Raddysh in 73 games. 3 even strength goals in 73 games. He had 13 and 78 the year before. Those 3 even strength goals were 14th on the Blackhawks. Same amount as Corey Perry had this year, which is not very good. Also, only shot 4.2%. Not a lot of puck luck out of Taylor Raddysh this year, and I'll tell you what. It felt like every bounce that could go against him. I'm not just saying this to defend him. It really felt like literally nothing was going right for Taylor Raddysh this year. Every bounce, whenever he had an open net, somehow the goalie would save it. He'd miss the net. 4.2%. He shot 15.5 the year prior, and I knew that was going to be higher than like what he'd average for his career. But I didn't think it would drop down to 4.2%. I think that kind of encapsulates just how frustrating it was a year for Taylor Raddysh, especially when the year prior, last year, when he potted 20 goals, he only had 9 more shots than he did this year. So it's not like he was getting way fewer opportunities. No, the puck just wasn't going in. He wasn't getting those bounces. And I can't tell you the amount of times that I saw Taylor Raddysh flub a shot or fan on something. Like, just nothing was going his way. I think part of it probably by the end of the year was in his head a little bit, but rather unfortunate to see the numbers drop that much. Even if, you don't believe in Raddysh's abilities, you can't deny that he had no puck luck when you look at that number. Also averaged 15 minutes, 53 seconds of time on ice, down by like 30 seconds from the year before. So still mostly played in a middle six type of role for the Hawks, was demoted on the 4th line from time to time, but didn't spend a ton of time down there. But what I did like to see about Taylor Raddysh, and where I think he does deserve credit, is his abilities away from the puck. Those were areas that I really wanted him to work on this year, and I thought he did make strides in those departments, and he does deserve credit for that. 84 hits this year, 8th on the Blackhawks. Maybe not super notable, but that's the most that he's tallied since his first year in the NHL. Also had 28 blocks, which, again, isn't something that's going to jump off the charts, but second most he's ever tallied in the NHL, made himself a more willing shot blocker, taking on a role as a penalty killer. And he also had 43 takeaways to 29 giveaways. And for someone who offered basically nothing whenever the puck was on his stick this year, at least he found a way to get the puck back more often than when he turned it over. I was impressed to see that out of Taylor Raddysh this year. And even the analytics weren't like truly terrible for how little offense he provided. 46.4 Corsi for percentage. That actually is the worst of his career, which tells you I think he can be a good offensive player, usually above 50%. On the ice, though, for 26 goals for to 55 against at even strength. 55 against in 73 games, considering he averaged 16 minutes of time on ice. That's really not bad. Like, defensively, he was solid. It's just, he didn't chip in for any goals himself. It was a tough year for the Blackhawks offense as a whole. That's why he was only on the ice for 26 goals for at 5-on-5 in 73 games. But the on-ice save percentage from his goaltenders when he was on the ice was 91.1%. I think that is notable. I do think that's because Raddysh was a reliable defender from a forward perspective this year. But breaking down the good and the bad, obviously, not a whole lot of good for Raddysh. Like I said, I will give him credit for rounding out his game in terms of being more physical, working on his defensive presence, and also just implementing himself on the penalty kill, being a willing penalty killer. I think that's really big, and those were all things I said about him. All things were things I wanted him to attribute to his game to kind of round things out, to offer a little bit more. And it was kind of the same thing I said about Philip Kurashev before he burst out offensively this season. I said, if the offense isn't there, what kind of is he? And I still feel that way a little bit about Philip Kurashev, right? Because I don't know if he's a true top 6 guy. I still would like to see him round out his game a little bit more, to offer up more to this organization and to this team besides his offense. Taylor Raddysh did that this year, and to his credit, the offense was down. The offense was crap, but he still did provide value in himself on the defensive side of things, blocking shots, adding in the physicality aspect, and also being a little bit more reliable. But at the same point in time, the offense took a step back in literally every category. So there's that kind of gets overshadowed in terms of the good, when what I thought was kind of going to be his bread and butter per se, being a goal scorer, having a good shot in the middle six while also providing these things, that took a step back, and that's certainly concerning. That's kind of the big part of the bad. The goal scoring was way down. The playmaking was down, didn't really offer much offense at all at 5-on-5. Wasn't really effective on the power play this season either. The playmaking was kind of non-existent. Like I said, he just fanned and flubbed on a lot of shots. There's not a lot as a whole went Taylor Raddysh's way this year, and it was pretty tough to watch. So as far as a grade, I don't really know how you could give him anything other than a D or an F. I'm going to give Taylor Raddysh a D. I'll give him some props for rounding out his game, but yeah, didn't really offer this team a whole lot of anything offensively this year. So not surprised to see a majority of the voters, 71% agreed with me and voted for D/F, 25% voted for C, and then 2% voted for B and 2% voted for A. I don't know who you people are, maybe Taylor Raddysh's family members or something, but I think C is probably the best that you could give him. D/F is probably right on par. Listen, I'm not giving up on Taylor Raddysh. I do still believe there's some upside. I would, if I were the Blackhawks, be willing to give him one more year to kind of see where he's at. And also considering the position the Blackhawks are in, I think they can afford to. But if they part ways with Raddysh, I really can't blame him, considering it was just disappointment after disappointment, basically all across the board for him in his 73 games played for the Blackhawks this year. So there is Taylor Raddysh's 2023-2024 report card. Go and comment down below as to what grade you would give Raddysh for his performance this season. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to go and follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey on X, so you can vote and interact with me on all of these polls when I post them. Coming up in just a minute, don't go anywhere, Hawks fans, because I do still have to provide some updates out of the 2024 IIHF Men's World Championship. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just a reminder, if you're watching on YouTube right now, to help me out by quickly hitting the like button, commenting down below as well, and make sure you're subscribed to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. And also, go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today. Just a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So make sure to go and check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and to subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, segment 3. Before I wrap things up here today, I did want to be sure to provide a few quick updates out of the 2024 IIHF Men's World Championship as Czechia, as just like the Stanley Cup playoffs, which I gave my picks and predictions to on Wednesday's episode. You can go and check that out if you want to hear more on that topic. But just like the Stanley Cup playoffs, we're now down to only 4 teams remaining here in the IIHF World Championship. I do quickly, though, want to go through the standings, as since I last talked about this tournament, they have advanced on into the quarterfinal, and now we're actually into the semifinal. So I do want to make sure to let you all know which 4 teams qualified from each of these groups, because things were a little bit tight-knit when I last spoke about this. Canada went on to win Group A. They went 5-0, technically won all 7 games, but 2 of them came in the overtime variety, so didn't get the perfect amount of points. Still came out on top of Group A. Switzerland went 5-1 with 1 overtime win to finish second in Group A. Czechia, the host country, went 4-2 with 1 overtime win to come third in Group A. And then Finland snuck in. They went 3-1 with 10 points, got that 4th spot in Group A. And then Group B, which of course included the United States. Sweden went undefeated, cleaned everyone out, a perfect 7-0 to win that top spot. The United States, though, did finish second as they went 5-2 with 1 overtime loss. Germany, Lukas Reichel, right behind them in the 3 spot, going 5-2, and then Slovakia rounds things out from Group B, going 3-2 with 1 overtime win and 1 overtime loss to nab that 4 spot in Group B. But love to see that all 6 Blackhawks players qualified for the quarterfinals here, at least got to play some playoff type of action here in this tournament. Unfortunately, though, 2 of them were knocked out immediately as Seth Jones, Alex Vlasic, and Team USA, they took on Peter Mrazek and Czechia in the quarterfinals yesterday. Mrazek actually served as the backup in this game behind Lukas Dostal, one of the most highly touted goaltender prospects in the NHL for the Anaheim Ducks, and he pitched an amazing shutout to lead Czechia over the United States 1-0. Vlasic, Jones, and the United States have their tournament come to a close. The USA will not be coming away with the gold medal at the World Championship for the first time in their history, even though I really anticipated them to give it their best run. The way the roster was shaping up leading into the tournament, super talented. I thought they were going to be able to give it a good go. Lukas Dostal had other plans, pitching a huge shutout to knock the red, white, and blue out of the tournament and advance host country Czechia on to the quarterfinals. Jones, in 8 games, finishes the tournament with 5 assists. Alex Vlasic finishes the tournament with 2 apples. Connor Bedard in Team Canada, by the way, did also obviously qualify for the playoff round. Bedard kind of been used in an interesting role. I'm not going to lie, Blackhawks fans, I haven't been, watching every game of this tournament. I've just been mostly following Stephen Ellis, following some folks who are there at the tournament, watching it in person, as well as watching all the highlights. Bedard's kind of been used as in an interesting role for Canada. He was the 13th forward in this game against Slovakia and had only been playing like 5 to 6 minutes in the couple games prior to this one. So kind of the odd man out for Canada, if you will, but it looked like there was a little bit of a chip on Bedsy's shoulder yesterday as he tallied a beautiful primary assist to set up Nick Paul for a beautiful goal. Also added in 3 shots on goal and was +2 to help Canada advance onto the semifinals, defeating Slovakia 6-3. They're going to be taking on Switzerland as in the semifinals, interestingly enough, although not sure Philipp Kurashev is going to be playing as he was healthy scratched in Switzerland's quarterfinal matchup against Lukas Reichel in Germany, probably because of a lack of production out of Kurashev. He only had 2 assists in 7 games so far, kind of down in the bottom 6 for Switzerland. So not a very good look for him in this tournament. Not even sure, like I said, that he's going to play against Canada in their semifinal matchup. Lukas Reichel in Germany, unfortunately, fell to Switzerland here in the quarterfinals, 3-1. But what a tournament for Reichel after joining on with the Germans late. He tallied 3 goals and 4 assists for a career best, 7 points for him in the World Championship in only 6 games. 3rd time that he suited up for Germany in this tournament. So love to see Reichel kind of keep the ball rolling, keep the momentum going. This is what we need for him, baby. Get that confidence up for him to have a really good summer, go into training camp as a man on the mission, get off to a really good start, cement himself as an NHLer. Let's keep this ball rolling here, Lucas. Love to see him play well in this tournament, even though Germany unfortunately got knocked out in the quarterfinals. But we do now know the semifinals, Czechia versus Sweden. Tomorrow morning, 7:20 a.m. Central Time is when that game is going to be played. And then Connor Bedard in Canada going to be taking on, hopefully, Philipp Kurashev will get into the lineup for Switzerland. That game is at 11:20 a.m. Central Time tomorrow morning. Make sure not to miss that. It's going to be on NHL Network. For all of those of you who have that channel, should be a fun little ending to the World Championship, See if Connor Bedard in Canada can come away with a gold medal. It would be Canada's 3rd in the last 4 years. All right. That's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for tuning into the show. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free if you haven't done so already, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Even if you're someone who regularly tunes into the audio version, it won't cost you anything. It really helps me out tremendously. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. That way, also, you can get the latest episode as soon as it's uploaded each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can go and find me on X at Jack Bushman2. Make sure also to go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So, till the next episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your Fridays. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.